I'm super excited to start sculpting the face of my grizzly bear. As one might imagine, the face of our animals is the most important part of our animals. As human beings, we are wired for connection to people's faces. We've been doing it the moment we came out of mom. We look around the room, we see the adults, and we make a physical relationship with people's faces. So it's important that we break down the reference image and start seeing and understanding the key anatomical features in a face that provides the layer of believability that our audience is looking for. So let's take a look at some reference and start looking for these key landmarks in a face, because there's some important planes that we need to start blocking out and exploring to really capture what it is that we're trying to capture, okay? So here it is, here's my little bear. And the first thing that I do, naturally, is look for the eyes. Where are the eyes? How big are the eyes? How big are the eyes and where are the eyes placed in relationship to other anatomical features in the face itself? Now for the grizzly bear, here it is, check it out. They got pretty small eyes. They're not huge cartoony looking eyes. They're pretty small. And specifically, that eye is in the middle of a skull. Okay, the orbit of the eye is surrounded by this gigantic, hard, bony structure. You see it in our faces as well. Of course, we have the bottom of the orbit of the eye here, and then we have our eyebrow way up here. Those intense, bony structures help protect our eyeballs. As one might imagine, the eyeball is incredibly important and very sensitive, so we're going to surround it with some very bony structures. Same goes for animals. If you look at it, we have a really cool brow here that surrounds our bear. Things that we're going to want to make sure that we include in the sculpture. Now, with animals, it's kind of tough at times because it's got a big, thick, furry coat. It's wet, so it's hanging in kind of a weird orientation at the moment. But the underlying structure should be there so that it can inform how the fur is going to be placed on top. Okay, so here's the eye. Now, the next thing I want to start to look at is the cheek and the nose bridge itself. Let's start with the bridge. The bridge of the nose comes right down here like this, okay? And if you look carefully, you can see it pretty clearly in this reference photograph. There's a plane break that happens right here. And this part is a little bit more cubic in shape, right? It sticks up vertically, makes a very defined, prominent primary form in the bear itself, something that we can't miss. It's hard, it's bone, so it's going to be a little bit more angular than some of the softer kind of organic parts in the model. In addition, as we go downwards on the face, we're going to start to establish this wonderful top jaw. And I lovingly just kind of refer this as the cheek itself. This top jaw is where we transition from the hard bony of the nose into the soft kind of skin of the cheek and the top teeth. And bears have these wonderful, wonderful soft top jaws that I want to make sure I capture. So this is another plane and another really important sculptural detail of the face that we need to include. Now, the next landmark that we need to kind of define here is that bottom jaw. We have the eye, the bridge of the nose out here, the cheek, but where's that bottom jaw? That bottom jaw is incredibly important. For us and for our friends out there in the animal kingdom, that bottom jaw, in every sense, is where the power comes from when we start to bite. Okay, that bottom jaw is a big, thick, bony area. It needs to be strong as we crunch nuts and berries or fish or whatever, right? It needs to have this really intense planar break in it so that we can see it from a distance. If you look at our face here, specifically what I'm talking about is this jawline. Our neck transitions right at our jaw and makes a very quick change in plane right there at the jaw. There's also a tremendous muscle in the back here called the masseter muscle that allows for the jaw to open and close. It's responsible for that chewing action. It's where we get a lot of the power for the hinge of the jaw coming up and down. So I look for that jawline. That's something that I'm going to explore. I don't know where it is on the sculpture, but it's something that's super important for me as I start to explore all the planes of the face itself. The next thing I want to look at here is the top of the head, and how that top of the head transitions to the eye socket itself. Remember, there's a ridge right here that defines the eyebrow. Well, how far is the top of the head to that ridge? That's an important proportional detail that's going to give this bear an iconic look. It also starts to set the stage as to where the ears are. Okay, on the bear itself, the ears is, they're pretty far back from the eye itself. It's a little different on some animals. If you go into the reptile world, shoot, their little ear holes are basically right on top of their eyes. It's a little bit different in some cases. But for us, the top of the head is almost in line with the ears themselves. So they're really pushed pretty far back. Something that I'm gonna want to take a look at. Another important part of the face is how the neck transitions into that entire sculpture itself. And I like to define pretty quickly how big that neck is, because there's going to be a natural plane break here. This is the neck and the back, and then right here is that plane break where we transition from one form, the neck, into another, the skull itself. So being able to figure out where that plane break happens within inside the model is super important. Now, if you're lucky, and I hope that you've done a solid job at this, you can find some other reference images that define the way that this shape is going to look like from an alternate view. And I've been lucky, I was able to find a bear from the front, and we can already start to see some of those planes come in action. Here's the orbit of the eye. If you look real carefully from the front, you get a really nice indication here as to the plane break from the orbit of the eye going downwards to that jawbone and into the cheek itself. That's an important plane break. We can see that from some distance. Also, if we start to draw out our nose and our cheek, you can almost see quite wonderfully, there it is, how cubic it is. It really is just pretty much a cube stuck into a head, which is pretty cool. Bears are pretty simple. Now you can also see from a distance that jaw, that bottom jaw, that masseter. Here's that plane break that I was talking about before. You can see its jaw there, and that's what we're looking for. We want to be able to understand the start and stop point of that jaw in relationship with its eyeball. We can also see that the head itself is much bigger in the back, makes sense, than it is on the front. So there's going to be a natural tapering. Big back by the ears, and it's going to taper and get smaller as it goes towards the nose itself. Some important planes to think about as we start to figure out the details of all of our facial anatomy. So try to find as many different photographs as you can. These key landmarks of the eyes, the snout, the nose, the upper jaw, the lower jaw, the relationship between the ears and the eyebrows itself, all critical landmarks and really super important facial and anatomical details that's going to inform your sculpture and make your work a whole lot better.